Greetings in the name of the Most High. Welcome to the Zeph Report podcast, or the Zeph Daniel podcast, or the podcast, or the Z podcast, or the Z Media Worldwide podcast, or any derivation you like. I was just talking about medical abuse, and I was looking at my life of all the attempts to silence me and discredit me over the years done by others that, kind of remain hidden, gaslighters, you don't really know, well, who are they really? You know what I mean? You don't know who they are. They're coming at you, in unison. But I do believe that last year at this time I was in the hospital and I had to undergo a lung surgery because the infection that I had caught from, it had gotten into the lungs and they couldn't remove it with a chest tube, so they had to do a major surgery so they could uncollapse the lung and remove the infection. And as I was recovering in the recovery room, they had moved me in there with either a BPAP or a CPAP mask, but they didn't have any oxygen in it. It was not. I don't even think it was connected to anything. It was, and I couldn't breathe, and I felt like I was going to go into cardiac arrest. And I was trying to alert, and Trish was in there, and she was all upset, and because she could see that I was in desperate straits, but the nurse wasn't having it. She wanted me to sit there and die. And I do believe it was another engineered, like I believe the whole hospitalization, in a sense, looking back on it, was somehow, I guess in a way, a kind of a coordinated effort to, since that time, there's been a lot of things that haven't recovered, and that permanent damage from their carelessness and their lack of knowledge, and honestly, the vibe in there was just like wall-to-wall witches. And when I say witches, I mean I can word that a different way. It was wall-to-wall oppression against me, Zeph, the child of God, right, a man of faith. And you could feel that oppression. Also, a boomer white male, 70 years old. Had I died in the recovery room, nobody would have batted an eye. And I think it was Trish that made such a ruckus in there. They tried to throw her out, but she wasn't having it. And then finally, the anesthesiologist butted in and said, "Why don't you let Zeph try to breathe on his own without the mask?" And he didn't realize there was no air in the mask. It's like that. So, she had to take the mask off, and she was really angry. And she took that mask off, and I began breathing and recovering, and I didn't die. But I should have, that was a very, very, I'd say I came within about 15 seconds of cardiac arrest. And I'm already, the pulmonary heart issues with me since the infection have been, pretty permanent damage there, and some of it caused by the hospital. But the one thing I can say is that I do believe in retrospect, and I've been saying this from the very beginning, that there was foul play involved in that, and that they intended to kill me. And they don't need a reason more than you've heard about all the COVID deaths and how much money they get for corpses, and the organ trafficking and all that stuff. I just got the impression that we're targeted anyway. But I did get the impression that it was like a spiritual battle. I could just feel it was like a satanic v God thing going on in the spirit. And this woman was absolutely evil to the core. I mean, evil rotten to the core. In other words, just a lover of death. And, a lover of death being in a nurse, running the OR recovery room. I mean, that seems perfect, right? Someone who loves suffering and loves death and hates God and hates everything, hates life. And there you are with a mask that isn't working, and she knows it. And I've had enough time to go back and analyze it. I mean, I can't prove it. Okay, I cannot prove it. I did have a witness with Trish, and I think Trish, that's the most proof I can get, is that she understood the mask wasn't working. Right? You understood that. So now, what have I done since then? This is going to be a heavy one, so just watch out. What have I done since then? I haven't suppressed the memory, but it's sunken. The experience is sinking back into the recesses of my mind to where, well, I'm not dead. And what's done is done. And, dodged a bullet there, and whether it was incompetence or a murder attempt, either way, it's sinking into all the battles I had there. The other thing was when they tried to trick me in the middle of the night, they overdrugged me. And then in the middle of the night, I mean, the wee hours of the morning, I mean, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning, they took me for an MRI of my brain after overdrugging me. So I was out with a professional anesthesiologist. And I woke up in the middle of it to these sounds of the MRI. My head was in the round part, and my head was buried in it. And I could hear this wah, wah, as they're, getting feedback of your brain. And I didn't know. And then I realized I had been restrained and tied down to the gurney or the table that's in front of the machine. And, these don't really look good now that I've kind of lightened my hair and my, I wear them for the health, it's a blue blocker is what it is, which is healthful. So I started punching at the machine, and I got one hand free, and I started punching, just making a lot of noise. And the people running the experiment on me, this is at the Presbyterian Hospital in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Okay, this is a mainstream hospital. I was there under Medicare. Okay, and they had me tied down in the middle of the night. No consent on my part. No consent on Trish's part. No consent on anybody's part. And I began punching the machine. I could see a guy back there, and he got all upset with the fact that I was practically convulsing on the table, and they had to call it off. And then we asked them the next day about it, and they said, "Well, we had to do when they do a brain test." They had to test my brain. And that was predicated on the idea that of the conversations I'd had with nurses and other people that worked in the hospital. Apparently, I'd been reported for being crazy or something, or talking about subjects that are really very taboo in those. So here I was. So I guess they thought they wanted to prove that I had brain damage. And that's what they were doing in the middle of the night. And that's why they had to sneak it. Now, those MRIs are expensive. They didn't finish the job, and they didn't charge my Medicare. It was never to be charged. You know how they charge for everything. You get a shot, you get a Tylenol. They charge for every little thing they do. But this was not set to be charged. This was not. This was some kind of sneak attack. So I take that incident and the lung. The lung, it was optional whether I had the surgery, but it was whether to remove the infection or not. It was called an empyema on the lung, and it's pretty common. People do get this with pneumonia and things like that. So, I didn't realize there would be long-term effects like not breathing properly and being constantly winded and constantly gulping for air. That there would be, of course, they sell you on the surgery because that's what they're in the business to do. and they never tell you about the after effects. And then a cardiologist tells me, oh, you'll be like, COPD type patients for the rest of your life. And that's not acceptable to me, to be damaged in that way. Anyway, so that was, I guess, and since that time, and this is now going into more of the prophetic, spiritual, whatever, that I've come to realize that was some kind of vengeance of the witches. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know how it got orchestrated, but just like gangstalking, gaslighting, you don't need to really meet the coordinator. There's a coordinator, obviously a spiritual coordinator, because how could people who don't know each other come at you and know information about you that no one has shared, and come at you and try to needle you and really rattle you to commit suicide, which is what the point of the gangstalking was to suicide me out. And then assassins, well, they're your friends. They're just like you, and they know everything you've been through, and they can empathize. And then, and then you wind up in some situation, or like in a hospital situation where you just don't come back, and they have a perfect excuse. And there's, so my criticism of self would be, I need to be more aware of the danger. I mean, I've been aware of the dangers, but in my mind, it sinks back to where you can handle the day to day. And yet I feel a lot of times there'll be depression for no reason. There'll be tears for no reason. There'll be really stuff that you think, well, what's down there? What's in there? What have you suppressed? And, the Satanists would tell you, well, you haven't suppressed anything. All that is bullshit. The idea that and they would, like my story about having written Society. Well, by the time I got to Society, I had been thoroughly brainwashed, by professional, if you like, military level techniques. And I could not get out of the hospital. I would be referred back to, I had a probation officer at the time, and I was facing jail time for possession of drugs, of narcotics. And they were just street drugs. They were just pills, from a guy that had a job in a pharmacy, and I had some pills on me, and it was a setup. They were using that to arrest me, and then, then that happened, and so that's another way they can get you. They can get you into jail, and then you shank you. It's a million dangers out there, and I never really. Once I get by the danger, it seems what I've done, and this is a habit of the way my mind may be corrupted, and I'm willing to say my mind is that I'm not 100% normal, meaning comparable to other people, because I've had a lot of experiences that are not like other people, and have changed my life forever and changed my consciousness, so that I will always be looked at as, well, we got to do a brain test on this one, because this is obviously someone that's got brain damage or is insane. But here's the thing. So what I do is, once I get by the danger, I then kind of go back into my safe little space, like, oh, it's okay. And then I put on this face, like, publicly, that, I'm coping, or I'm in, better shape than I am, forgetting to even acknowledge, because no one wants to hear, well, how are you doing today? Well, I'm between all the tears, I'm struggling with all the memories of all the betrayals, mainly betrayals that have happened, in my life for no reason, except that I'm just targeted. And people are, like in the documentary, I say people are afraid. Yes, they're afraid because they're told to go after the target. You're targeted because you're different. It's like, what do they really want to do with an autistic kid? Well, they like to do a post-birth abortion, or a Down syndrome kid. Well, they'd like to, have post-birth abortion legalized so they can get rid of the kid at 3 years old. And then to that, I say, well, that's a human sacrifice. And then they would say, oh, satanic panic, seeing Satan in everything. Most of the members of the Church of Satan are, and here we're going to start getting into the meat of the matter. So when I escape, these people, and they all think they know everything, you know what I mean, about the world. And they really don't, but they think they do. And it's because they work in groups, and it's very much like a bunch of Rosemary's Baby type. If you ever saw that, the Roman Polanski movie, it's the paranoia that goes with that. The group knows something, but Rosemary didn't realize they were a satanic cult, and that she was giving birth to Satan or the Omen or something along those lines. That's exactly how they work. So a few things to clear. Okay, so in between these events of long-term psychiatric and drugs and the near-death experiences, coma, overdose, suicide attempts. My daughter's suicide is another thing that when I think about it, or when I just am relaxed and it comes across my mind, I break down. I can't just tell people, well, in between breakdowns from all the things that happened, I'm not doing too bad. Wouldn't it be nice if I didn't have to deal with that all day long every day? But then when I see you, I'm like, here I am. I'm really doing. I'm always showing people how I feel like I need to compensate. In a way to have to be better than I have to appear as if I'm really altogether normal to make up for the perception that there may be something wrong with me. So I try to be extra normal, which means getting rid of any kind of crazy stories, which then means those things, they get suppressed. Now, I'm not talking about suppressed memory syndrome. I'm talking about brainwashing is another thing. When you're, there's also programming that goes on with people, for example, with me, it was that there is no such thing as Satanism. There is no such thing as pedophilia. There is no such thing as people being kids being suicided because they are spilling the beans on what mom and dad are affiliated with. There's no there seems to be no record of any of that. And the propaganda these people put out, this is all fresh on my mind because we've been looking at this movie that debunks all people that have been claimed to have repressed memories emerging, and satanic ritual abuse, and memories of children being sacrificed and all that. Every one of those people is lying. Okay, they're all lies. And if you even mention it, like satanic ritual abuse or SRA, automatically on a list to be discredited and to be told you're crazy and you need to see a shrink, because none of that's real. Never happened. You're just psychologically messed up. Maybe you're schizophrenic. Maybe you're psychotic. Who knows, what kind of label they put on you, but they put a label on you so that you go, what they want you to go is what I did. You're right. I remember my father one time said, it's time for you to go back to the hospital, to the mental ward, and he said, I'll never forget this. He said, for a refresher. And because apparently I was starting to get too close to the truth. And, and when that happens, they have to. So my parents were my handlers, basically, and my friends. I didn't have any friends. They were all handlers. They were all indoctrinated into this other world when they were, basically just coming of age. There's part of their coming of age ritual. So, but if you say, satanic ritual abuse, and when you mean is that, for example, I gave a testimony of Playtime, which was a pedophilia or even a grooming, sexual conditioning of children in a ritual format, a certain format of and a certain things happen, very clinical to sexualize children to prepare them for a life in society. Because, it's nod, wink, wink behind closed doors. There are gatekeepers that would demand that, your kids will at least put out to move to the next level. No one says anything, and if anyone does say anything, they have to be discredited, taken out of society, framed, thrown in jail, suicided or assassinated, so that the others are too afraid to ever come forth. But when we're talking about this subject, you're talking about the whole world. You're not talking about like a city or a bunch of elite asshole perverts. You're talking about the world. So they've tried to debunk the term satanic ritual abuse. And I agree it's too broad of a term. And if you say satanic abuse, that doesn't quite, that's a little more narrow, a little more acceptable to society. But now you're starting to get away from it. And then if you go into, instead of, you just say abuse, then it becomes the Menendez people. There is no word on the whole spiritual implication or what the parents were involved in spiritually. Everyone's involved in something. For example, people that are like presidents of entertainment companies and things like that have affiliations in certain secret societies and clubs, for the very least, the Masons, who are doing rituals. And, I suppose when they do something like knock you out, a Masonic ritual, and then you're reborn, I guess someone who doesn't like Masonry could say, I was satanically ritually abused in a ritual. But I remember when someone I knew, everyone I knew, like in the movies and stuff, they were all dabbling in black magic. So they would do a ritual where they target a guy in a car. The car goes off the bridge. The guy gets killed. And that's the conclusion of the ritual. Now, to me, that's, they may not have the guy on the altar and be stabbing him and pulling his heart out, and eating his legs and arms and cannibalizing him. We've also had a lot of reports about missing children. Apparently, they don't believe there are any missing children. People just don't do that. Well, there was, with the migration situation, we now became aware publicly that there is human trafficking, that the American government is very involved. I mean, until it gets cleaned up, until Trump cleans it up, very involved in human trafficking because it's the most lucrative business there is. And a lot of the human trafficking is also done by these cartels who are Satanists, who do satanic ritual abuse of children. But you can't talk about it because they've destroyed those terms. But if you say abuse, that doesn't cut it. That's very light, it's very broad and very glib, frankly. If you say satanic abuse, it's like, well, what's that? You say satanic ritual abuse, you're seeing Anton LaVey and, robes. And he says, we would never kill anyone. I'm like, you're not even a Satanist unless you've killed someone. What the hell are you talking about? Again, Anton LaVey is controlled opposition, not a real Satanist. And he's duped all these people. I mean, and they're adamant. They're like Anton, you say something about Anton LaVey online, you will be drawn and quartered. That is their hero. And they will say that we Satanists are in it so that we can be liberated sexually and do what we feel like doing. And so we are also the people of reason because we like science and scholarship. And that's really what it's all about. And they say there really isn't this, they say the whole satanic panic started from, and yes, Richard Stanley, who, the sort of avant-garde director of famous director says in our documentary that he goes along with, that it's all a hoax. He basically is calling me a liar, but we left it in there because I didn't edit it. I didn't make any editorial decisions because I wanted to be honest. Do you know what I mean? I wanted to be honest, so I stayed out of it. But I think looking back on the edit now and how Larry, of course, friend, edited, and he had to tone down a lot of stuff too. That was just that our lawyers are telling us, I have the most strict lawyers in the world. Donaldson, Khalif, and Perez of Los Angeles. That they were the ones that got the Stanley Kubrick film, a documentary called Room 237, which you might have seen. That had millions of clips and millions of things you could sue with it, but they went through it and they got the Donaldson approval, and that film's out there today, and it's still making money, and it's got a zillion clips. So, but there's things you can't really go into, and things that are licensed, and things and there's things you can go into. It's not like a no money podcast. Like this is my exercising of free speech, and there's no monetary value really attached to it. So to not veer from the, I know it's getting heavy, but so when you say these terms, satanic ritual abuse, it's been debunked by the latest is the first one I was aware of was a movie called Satanic Panic. And apparently this reviewer in the UK had reviewed it with a glowing review. And then she got our movie to review, and she just slammed the whole thing. And, it was insinuating that Larry was my controller, our director, and he was, feeding me, making me make up stuff or something. And of course, and we've had other reviews too, where the guy goes, well, maybe Zeph, Woody and Zeph was exorcising demons, and now he's okay, and he's had the last laugh because I suppose what they're trying to say, and it's obviously I didn't do the movie because I would do it much differently, but I suppose, and that's a good reason not to do it. But you could take the movie a couple ways. You could take it like I was nuts, and I had a very dark time, and all these people that were trying to kill me and against me, that was all just demons that I had to work out. I just was a very troubled person, a troubled soul, and I had to work through these horrors of maybe mental illness, and then finally emerging on the other side. Versus, no, there really was a conspiracy to get rid of me, discredit me, destroy me from early childhood, which I could tell you the beginning of the persecution. It's when I raised a fuss in that playtime ritual, which is what it was. That's literally a satanic ritual, but it's posed as science, as sociology. You know what I mean? Conditioning children to accept the way the world is, but also teaching them the hush hush that everyone has to keep the secret. And if someone wants to join the secret world, which is the whole world, then people say, he's talking about a secret world. It doesn't exist. Yes, the secret world runs this world. There is no this world. There's only that world. And they, they run the show. They call the shots. And anybody that talks about satanic ritual abuse, Satanist, breeders, that was another one. There were breeders. I've known people that were, or they claimed, so, well, where's the proof? The proof is down their throats. When if they do cannibalism, the proof is they've already ingested the proof. But but see, there's a big differentiation between that kind of thing, right? And that's what Anton LaVey is there for. He's there to block that perception that they may be involved in killing. When we know darn well that, even some of the famous Satanists that we've had out there, we've had Manson, we had, Richard Ramirez, Remember, was he the night? Was he the Night Stalker? Was it the Hillside Strangler? We've had all these people that were that appeared to be doing rituals of killing people, and they were satanic rituals, but you don't say that. You say they just, because of they're screwed up, and so they just kill people. There is no order to it. And if you see more of an order to it, then there's something wrong with you. So, here's the battle. And the minute that I got removed because I was acting up in the playtime thing, and I either got kicked out or I was screaming and yelling, and they were hurting me, and I had to be separated. You know what I mean? And that's, I didn't go into that in the documentary, but I had to be separated from that. And it seemed like that day, and from that day on, I've been persecuted. They say, well, usually you have to accept Jesus, then they persecute. Well, they doubled down after Jesus. But saying no to that is like, to them, okay, that's what life is. And if you don't, and the way you become part of it is you have to be initiated. You have to be initiated into it. And so that's ritualistic. But if you say that, then automatically you're a liar. And so they have this propaganda going. So there's nothing you can say. You can't say satanic ritual. It's like, it's become sensational, like Oprah and Geraldo or something. There's just no way to get at it. They've covered all the exits. They've covered all the language, so that you're to be shamed if you bring it up. It's like, oh yeah, making it up again. Suppressed memories that you were taken to these rituals when you were a baby, and you participated in them, and and they were eating babies and killing people that they didn't like and all that. And the reason that their propaganda, which is what it is because it's all lies. So the reason their propaganda, and the other thing is, most of these people, like the last thing we saw was called Satan Wants You, 2023. It was a terrible movie. Really bad documentary, terrible directing, terrible editing. A lot of assumptions. Like one guy goes, what do you mean there's 1 million kids missing? There's only a couple million kids a year born in the United States. How could there be half of those missing? It's like, you won't even go look up the FBI file where it said years ago 800,000 a year. You won't even look at that. Okay, so in other words, with the proof in front of your face, human trafficking, satanic rituals done by cartels, and right out in Juarez and other places, right out in your face. When they have, when it's well known that these traffickers aren't just trafficking children for kiddie porn, and that when Trump says something like, they're most likely all dead. How do they wind up dead? They're just pimped out until they get killed. Well, but what is that? In other words, trafficking toddlers that are going to be killed in a sex ritual. It's not satanic ritual abuse because you can't say that. So I did say it, in the documentary. I think I did try to explain that to be a participant of this world, you don't have to believe in Satan as God or believe in Satan at all. It's more of a description of certain kinds of behaviors, and they say, well, we're just going against taboo, the unfair taboos of society, and breaking. We're progressives, so they're all progressives, and that's where the whole gay movement, it lives there, and then I know people and producers and stuff who do. Yeah, they say they're not doing it anymore. They've confessed to me, but they've been doing black magic rituals on me, to make me stumble. And it was unbeknownst to me when it was happening. I didn't know that. I had witchcraft like that put on me. It seemed like pretty much to where people would look at me as a child and say, that's a troubled soul. Well, troubled, or was I being troubled? Was I being targeted, or was I just sick? Now, I was willing to let them have their way and just say I was sick because I wanted to go back to Los Angeles and I wanted to find out, like a detective, what happened. But, when I finally wound up having panic attacks and I was unable to participate in society at all at that point, I couldn't drive a car, couldn't do anything. And then, all this stuff kind of came back of that particular night that sent me on that journey where I finally was taken out of LA. And it wound up so vividly in the film Society. And it was the basis of my entire incarceration. I wouldn't even call it that. It was like the milieu around looked like a country club. I mean, it was pretty nice. It wasn't like a dank prison or something. But the restrictions, the legal restrictions on us, were mainly that you can't leave. You can walk on the grounds. Here's your room. Here's your roommate. The nurses do rounds every hour. And there's the nurses' station. Here's a couple of seclusion rooms. And you can't leave. And if you leave, we'll contact your probation officer and they will, you won't be here for drug therapy anymore. You'll be referred back to the LA County court system to be thrown in jail for drugs. And so, great. So they get you. And the whole basis, there was another basis of it, a gay basis, which it's interesting. The guys that produced this movie and directed this movie, which is pure propaganda against anybody seeking truth. And it doesn't matter what subject, just any subject. They're just anti-truth and totally anti-science. And they both admit in their IMDb or their profiles, they're gay progressives. And they're the ones that are pushing the satanic panic as a reason to look away. And they're members of the Church of Satan. Those are the ones who are pushing the satanic panic. And I think Stanley, in my opinion, who appears in the documentary, is an occultist. I don't mean any disrespect. I don't want to have a fight with the guy. I'm trying to stay out. I don't want to argue. There's no point to talk. We're day and night, completely opposite people. You know what I mean? I completely disagree with everything he says, and he disagrees with everything I say. But I didn't put it there. It was put there because our producer knows his friends, with him, and that it's good to have people of stature weigh in, whatever they're, what I mean. Even if I don't want it to be a one-way thing or propaganda. It's good for people to weigh in with their take on it. And his take is pretty much the same take I ran into with the director and my co-writer, Rick. They just thought I was crazy. They thought there was something to it, but maybe it was a sexual abuse issue, which hurt me mentally, and I wasn't able to process. Interestingly enough, my daughter's dead because she went through abuse. But when she was explaining to me about the abuse, she said she met Satan. I never revealed this before. And that, she was up against these occultic forces and witches and stuff. And they were trying to groom her. There was a point where they were trying to get her and her mother to throw me into an asylum here in Santa Fe and groom her to be a society girl in Beverly Hills. And that was going on at the time. And she was a real brat at that point. I mean, but I could tell that she had that energy of that glow of the occult. You know what I mean? You can see it. It looks like an angelic glow. He comes as an angel of light. All the truth is buried in the Bible. It's just that people don't dig it out, or they make an interpretation that's not supposed to be there. I got so frustrated fighting these people that I just don't even bring scripture into these discussions because it just is a waste of my time, frankly. I used to love getting together with people and reading the Bible and, digging in and finding parallels and meanings and just having discussions. And, oh boy, those days are gone because we had, even back then, witches infiltrate. And one they leave potions and things around, and that make you sick. And I believe that they've tried all these things with me, and even the hospital when I was raped. Well, I was raped and implanted with, I guess, the flu or something, anally. And of course, they enjoy that over drugging you and then raping you. That's something they just like to do because you can't fight back. And that was, they were like just a bunch of perverts, really, But the whole psychiatric push was for liberation, for going against society, for like I had in one instance, I had two gay roommates, and they were trying to, and one of them in the middle of the night said, he goes, and I was supposed to be asleep, he goes, "You can fuck me," and he's got his ass up in the air, and and I finally said to him, and then he said, I really need to talk to the nurse about masturbation. And things like that he would say to me, and I said, why is this guy here? I mean, there's nothing wrong. I mean, he's a pervert, but that doesn't make him mentally ill. I mean, anyway, that all kind of came to a head. They finally gave me LSD, and it wasn't from the doctors. It was from one of my roommates, which was a plant. I had two roommates. There were three in the room this time, and they were trying to get me to go gay. And it just, when I saw that guy over there, just kind of whispering, "You can fuck me, you can lay me," or whatever he was saying. And it just was so, perverse. It wasn't, loving or sexy even, or seductive. It was like a dirty thing, And then I found out later, well, when this guy took me, he picked me up for a visit, I was able to go have a brief visit with my family. And I remember he had a Mustang convertible. So I remember pretty good. And he goes, "So here's the deal. I can drive you right now, down to West Hollywood and, put you in the stable. And and don't even have to come back here it was a locked unit. It was called ICU. You don't even have to come back here, but you got to do what you're told. And you can get out of this hellhole, because they're going to use shock treatments on you. They're going to do all kinds of things, scramble your brain, maybe transfer you to a forever establishment where you'll never get out." And so they were, and I said, "Was this? Yeah, this is coming from them, not me. They've hired me to do this, to pick you up and give you this offer. Now, what do you call that, folks? Seems pretty systemic, does it? Seems kind of out of the fabric of society, not just some individual person or someone's mother or some friend, but this is like, behind this guy, there's like 50 people who are handling this case, me. And so all he had to do is just drive me to, West Hollywood, west of Doheny, and, east of Doheny, in Beverly Hills, and then west into West Hollywood. And then apparently there are living spaces, bedrooms, whatever. I'd seen one. This other guy tried to do this to recruit me, and so I he talked me into visiting his house, and this is all part of the same people doing the same thing, and apparently this was the new plan. And when I got there was like boys lying all over the living room in these, like, not even barely sleeping bags, and they were all like hungover, and just it wasn't sexual or anything, but they were just. And then the guy started trying to, touch me and feel me up and all that stuff. He goes, "You could be making over $1,000 a night." And so the enticement then was money. And then the second enticement was, but I'd have to move in there and I guess find a place on the floor. And then when they called me up to go to go in the limo or whatever. What ends up happening to these people is they are taken to satanic rituals and sometimes sacrificed. And many times they come back beaten up, or they have to. We knew one that was, a woman who was, every time that, she was programmed to get in the limo, and every time she came back, many times she'd have to go to the ER and then be admitted to the hospital because of all the wounds given during the nice orgy. So to me, all orgies are satanic in that sense, that they involve pain. They involve, and now that pain is out in the open. I mean, people, trying to asphyxiate themselves when they're masturbating. So when they come, they have the choking sensation. What do we call that? Normal. If you say satanic, you're in trouble. There is no God. There is no Satan. That's all part of the oligarchy. That's what we're fighting against, right? So Anton LaVey and his ilk, I'm sure were under investigation, but also I think Michael Aquino was associated with that, but he was also associated with L. Ron Hubbard and others, and was pretty high up. And the idea was to turn the U.S. military into it already is a satanic organization. I remember Dr. Stan Monteith. What a beautiful man he was. He was fighting all this. And he said on the air, publicly, he said, the U.S. military is satanic because they want to win wars. Just like the deadpan, just like that. That's why, if anyone's wondering, but see, today, if you call it satanic, they go, oh, everything's satanic. You're just one of these crazy Christian white people, boomer, uneducated, idiot. And just anything that comes close to even being, remotely connected is called out as a lie. And the people doing it are lying. Why? Because you want to make a lot of money. So they keep citing this book, Michelle Remembers, from Canada, and that started the satanic panic, and said that they made millions of dollars and rode around in limos and first class hotels and all that stuff. And I'm here to say that, contrast that with Kathy O'Brien, who never made any money at it. I know that some people think it's a topic that would garner money, but I don't know that many people, if any, made any money, because they're already they're targeted. They're not going to be allowed. They can't make money. I don't care what business they go into, because society has a block on that unless you join them. But there is no there. There is no society. So what are we talking about? Oh, well, you sound confused. Maybe you need a little therapy. Maybe you need some medication. Oh, but please, Zeph, get some help. I mean, you've got to really be suffering with all this, that everybody is out to get you, and everybody is part of this global cult, and they're all following you, and they're all, harassing you, and they're trying to kill you in the hospital. I mean, when does this end? When does it end? So for all those people that are going to see the documentary whenever it comes out, I would please earmark this, or mark this rather, index this pod to be an addendum to it, because we address, so when people have objections, and they will, and they'll just say it's, I think that the line will, because I'm very likable in it. Not likable, but, I'm doing my best. I'm not trying to be liked. I'm just, I'm not trying to prove anything. I'm not trying to sell anything. I'm just kind of going back over things that happened, but left a lot out. And, I didn't obviously talk about getting sick, very sick. I mean, to the point where they were already popping the champagne. They were loving it. You don't want to be associated with these people because, number one, the idea of that God targets them and he's going to wipe them out. I mean, there'll be nothing left of them in the end. I can guarantee you that. And if they think they're going to get somewhere with their witchcraft, just look at what Leviticus says about witches. You'll see what I mean. They're, and then they go, oh, look, the Salem people were picked on. Salem, the people burned at the stake for witchcraft in Europe and in America were lambs of God, innocent ones. That's why they were burned, because they got away with it. It was legal. And then they could tie them to witchcraft and all that. But, the real witches, the real witches are the upstanding members of society with their tailored suits and their proper gowns and their official Cinderella balls. I mean, the people who attended John McCain's funeral, they're the ones. Okay, Nancy Reagan. I mean, well, if you make me go there, then. And you say something about Nancy Reagan around conservatives, they're like, oh my God, we need to work on you. It's Trump and Reagan and Nancy Reagan. Well, Nancy Reagan was very similar to my mother in a lot of ways, except she wasn't crazy. She was, I would say psychotic. And the multiple personalities of my mother were so defined that she didn't even know when she'd flip from one to the other. They were beyond Sybil. You know what I mean? It was like you get a season of one of these people, and then there'll be a break and there'll be another person come forward who's nice to you, who wants to be mom and make up for bad things. And then the evil witch comes out. And it's like, you and your father and Rick all need to be killed. You've all fallen down on the job. You've all embarrassed me. And like I said, when my brother got killed and he had married a witch, and then he had gained, they were putting spells on him to gain weight. He became like a grape with a belt on. He just became a balloon, and finally died at 33 years old. And after the funeral, I mean, and this is just, you'd have to have been there to really understand that just the level of this. And my mother's in there, and she wipes her crocodile tears off. She starts laughing her ass off, and she goes, "How did I do?" Now I got you and Don next. And I think when my brother went, my dad pretty much gave up. He was next. And then I was targeted, along with them, but I beat them at their own game. See, I have extreme clairvoyance because of, just having to, not knowing if someone's going to come kill me, or, just heightened awareness. And that has kept me from, getting killed by these people again and again. When I had held them at bay with a knife, and it was that they were doing a black ritual, which would be my death. And then I ruined it. I ruined everything. In fact, what I'm doing right now is ruining it. It's ruining it for everybody. I ruin it for everyone. And it's because they won't admit that they owe their life to this secret world, which involves the selling of the soul, or the losing of I would say more or less, the losing of the soul in exchange for the world, which gives you in the end neither. You get neither one in the end. So I try to tell people about that, and they just start laughing. You ever want to get paid? You ever want to be something, or you just want to be a loser? And I'm like, how can you be a loser if you pursue the truth, or you're trying to figure it out? I'm trying to figure it out here. And to do that, you have to be brutally honest. And I was willing to say, I'm nuts. I'm very willing to say maybe all of this stuff I made it up, not made it up, but part of my maybe psychology was to see life in this way and see people in this way, and it was all part of mental illness. And I freely admitted that. I freely said, I'm willing to take that if that will help me. They thought, well, that's a first step in restoring your stature in society, because they wanted me because of, I've got brains, talents, and they could, they wanted to put me to work. But if we could just get him to stop with that fucking story, to stop with all that. And they've convinced themselves, by the way, and this is psychotic, that everything they're involved in doesn't exist. And that anyone who talks about it is mentally ill. So that's where we are. Same standoff as we have always been. And why do the assassins take you out? Because they're pledged that if anyone starts leaking the secrets, they get taken out. It's just part of the deal. Or somehow, I mean, why would they put a rumor in town that I was dead? So they, and then, so basically that that not only do they get off the hook, they get a pop for the sacrifice. That would be a satanic ritual sacrifice participated in by dozens of people that don't know each other. The place chosen was Denver. Perfect. But you see, I know all this stuff. And they act like, and they know too, but they just like, you're crazy. We're going to get you. We're going to put you in a rubber room you'll learn not to speak like that. It's like, well, I haven't said enough. I mean, even toward the end of my relation with my own mother, she goes, you don't know anything. And then I started mentioning, the human sacrifices and, all that kind of stuff. And then she was quiet. You don't know anything. Oh, you mean about all your murders? Now, I have to tell you, unless you've murdered somebody, you're just not going to have any stature. That's just the way it works. They're not going to really respect you. Then you say, well, what about Trump? Isn't he Scottish Rite Freemason? Yeah, that's a problem, isn't it? He pledges to do the right thing and he believes in God, but we've seen him do massive wrong things, like with the last pandemic, just shutting down the economy, doing what he was told by the deep state. So I just got to give my faith to the Lord Jesus. And I'm glad if someone wants to help clean up society. But until the world learns to really grow up, accept their responsibility in this awful Sodom and Gomorrah ethos, until they grow up and realize, and admit they're wrong and repent and accept Jesus as their savior. Because there is no other savior. There's no, if you think we don't need saving, well, you'd agree with Anton LaVey then. The world is your oyster. Just dig your pleasures here, dig your pleasures there, break on through to the other side, baby. Oh, it didn't really work that way. It didn't really work out for me. Yeah, because you're getting older. And nobody wants you when you get older. Nobody's interested in what you have to say about anything. So there goes your satanic dream. Oh, I'm sorry, I said Satan. I'm sorry I said that. Okay, gay witches, jump on me now and punish me. And protect your world. Do as thou wilt. But if you're going to sacrifice people, make sure they're young. According to Aleister Crowley. Anyway, there's a lot more you could go into. You could make it an academic subject like, what's his name? Who's that guy what's his name? Jay Boring? Is his name Jay Boring? What's his name? Jay Boring. Just call him Jay Boring. He tries to make like a class out of all this occultic stuff. And, some of the mainstream writers that have been very influential, they're all household names. And he said on the air, he said to me, or he said to somebody, he was saying it to me, why he would not connect with me. He said, anyone that claims to have been either, gang stalked, or it feels that that's a real thing, I automatically reject. Automatically. And that goes for satanic ritual abuse as well. So to me, you're looking at, what is his name? I call him Jay Boring because, he's a complete total bore when he's talking, don't you think? I mean, I get bored. It's just like, God, how many times we have to go over H.G. Wells and these various writers, and who gives a shit? This guy doesn't know shit. I mean, he knows where the bodies are buried. He knows the gang stalking is real. He knows satanic ritual abuse is real. He knows all this is real, but it's not in his wheel. He's there to deflect you from thinking that, and Alex Jones promotes him. Well, it's better than, Steve, the liar Quayle, but it's almost on that same level. And anyone that still believes Steve Quayle is, and all his warnings of gloom and doom, I don't look. With me, it's just, if it's Jay Boring, then I move on to where it's not boring anymore. You know what I mean? If it's Steve Quayle, I move on to where, I'm not blaming Jones, but his discernment's nowhere near ours. And he claims to be the most discerning of all time. So this whole InfoWar thing has really gone to his head. I think he's feels that he's responsible for saving the world. And usually when we feel like that, I felt like that at times, it comes from when you're isolated for a long time and you develop delusions of grandeur, and you become somewhat omnipotent in your mind, that you're really I used to think I was like a warring angel, like Michael. I was like Michael, and I have powers, and I'm here to put down all the Satanists and free the children. And the whole mistake about that is when the Lord showed me, and really the Lord, I wouldn't know any of the stuff I know if the Lord didn't didn't give me that prophetic gift or whatever. But the Lord showed me in the very beginning, I had help, but you know how the Lord speaks to other people? So someone would say to me, well, things got screwed up back then. Talking to a friend, John, things got screwed up back then. I end up fighting, and he goes, the whole world, fills in the sentence. The whole world, he says. I said, you knew? Well, why didn't you pull me aside and tell me? Because I couldn't. I couldn't tell you. It's okay. I have this pain all day long, every day. And now, if there are old peers, they're afraid to talk to me. They're not afraid of me personally. What can I'm a 70-year-old man in a wheelchair, for fuck's sake. What am I going to do to them? Nothing. I don't want vengeance. Because if they break ranks and talk to me, like off the record, then they could get in trouble. So therefore, it's what's really awful is when you get to know someone and you like them, but you feel that there's that wall in front of you and them. And, the same thing happens with when they send you girlfriends, if that's your thing, girls, they send you girlfriends, and their job is to watch you and to steer you into the right handlers, because you're like precious cargo. Because if they can unleash you, rather than if they can, I guess, initiate you, then that's a lot of power for everybody, isn't it? It's like mining. It's like, we hit the mother lode here, And it's funny, they play around with sex, and all that is as loose as it can be. And looks to me like from TikTok and Facebook, they're having sex like rabbits or something. They're having sex like all day long now. And that's all they do, is they do gossip and sex and gossip, and drink energy drinks, and they do this all day long. And I can tell you this: that kind of attitude toward one's body, using it for something it's not intended for, like, for example, magical ritual, is a good way to wind yourself up in a pile of misery. You get in a lot of trouble by seeking other gods, and the sex god is one of them. And if it all becomes focused on that, you become a very stupid person, a very dull, someone who can't hold a conversation, someone that can't remember their own name. Just useless. You just sit there as there's the fornicator on the, hey, there's the fornicators on the side of the road. Look, they're fornicating. Wow, isn't that something? Me and Pete, we've been saved. Let's go join them. And join the New Jerusalem. Anything goes. Liberation, baby. So they sell that on the surface. And then what it really is slavery to your soul. So I've been waiting, I've been waiting for someone to say, you were right. And it's not I'm right. God is right. So I'm right about the way it works, because there were no classes on. I had to do all this on my own. And every time I look into something, then I get hurt. Like either, some kind of, I just narrowly miss some dying. And then, then I forget about it, because to cope, I can't just have that on my mind all day long. Or else I would be, can you imagine? I'd be like, all day long. I'd just be like one big tick. Who knows where they're going to get me? Just a paranoid, psychotic nutcase. So that's the whole point of it all. And unfortunately, people think they can go to church and they're with Jesus, and they maintain this connection to the world. And I don't care if you could be a billionaire enjoying bone-in ribeyes in your penthouse in New York City, Manhattan, or in wherever it's nice, in Tokyo or whatever. You could be that guy and riding around in limos all day long in private jets and be with Christ, totally saved. Or you can be scrounging around in the gutter for a little food because you're starving, and the Lord's going to look good on you because, he's got a burden for you. And you could be going straight to destruction by thinking that your poverty makes you noble and makes you saved. And that this guy's wealth makes him unsaved. That's not how people are measured. And, it's like the world has its own way. They call the people that they boost, the big influencers, celebrities, all that, they're the chosen. They're called the chosen. And they can do no wrong. And everyone else falls into their idolatrous position, worshiping the chosen. And then they're led by, obviously Lucifer, who they don't know. And all they have to do is correct the world, go with whatever the flow is, whatever the newest thing is. It's always a countdown to human destruction. It always ends up in slavery, versus the guy that is looked at as society's loser, who is happily following the Lord. And but the problem I run into with this whole Christianity thing is that there's no difference between the Christian world and the outside world of the world. It's the same thing, and that that broke my heart when I learned that. I had to learn that later in life. I learned that in the 90s. That really broke my heart. That was a source of tears and tears and tears. That no matter how much I tried, you can have them for dinner, you can hug them, you can bail them out of jail, you can help their children, you can do everything. It's not good enough. That wall's still there. And so I thought we were brothers in Christ. No, you are the problem. You need to shut up and follow your church elders. In a couple of years, maybe we'll let you write a book. Well, that doesn't sound like me. It sounds like slavery. So that's the church system. And then, of course, there's the pedophile church system, which is big in the Catholic Church. And it's like, see no evil, hear no evil. If you want the backing of the church, you'll keep your mouth shut, right? And then there's society. You'll keep your mouth shut. When they sent those Menendez boys to prison for gunning down their parents, even though they tried to make it like a self-defense, kind of case out of it, afraid of future abuse or, whatever. Anyway, the town just wanted to convict. They wanted Jesus they wanted those boys on the cross. Didn't matter how the circumstances. Was like, oh yeah, the abuse excuse. Fry them! And I want to watch them burn. You literally had people talking like that. Today we have a murderer that murdered a guy, CEO of a health insurance company. And it's probably a scumbag. Who knows? I don't know enough about the case, but the guy guns him down, and he's instantly a hero on X. I mean, they are just worshiping the ground this guy walks on. He is a total hero right now. And I'm like, yeah, okay, so give us Barabbas. Crucify Jesus for not doing anything wrong. Let Barabbas go for being a murderer or a thief, but crucify Jesus because he didn't do anything. That's a good reason to be crucified. Same reason we burn witches at the stake, only they're not witches. Usually they didn't do anything wrong either. In a great world. But I do know one thing. One day, it will come to a conclusion, and I'm just a messenger. I mean, I might get killed on the way, but that's okay. I'm probably won't be, because I'm an eternal being. I've always been here, and I will always be here, and I will always be invincible. Even if I was dead and hauled off, I'd still be here in some way, manner, shape, or form. And just like all the whole kingdom of heaven is here. The whole, if you mess with one of us, whom Jesus has plucked out of the morass of fallen humans, which is all humans. But you mess with one of God's own, especially children, you've now ticked off the entire kingdom of God. You wonder why you're getting audited, why your business failed, why your health failed, why you're now facing cancer and all that stuff. You wonder why someone like me could live through, there's no way. With what I had wrong with me, complete failure of every organ, MRSA, sepsis, um, major surgery and all that stuff, there is no way. Other people go in there. I mean, there are people dying in there right and left. They come in for, they're having trouble with breathing. They're coughing. Next day, they're out in a body bag. I mean, it's, all I can say is, well, I hope they had Jesus. The irony of this hospital I was in, it's called Presbyterian. The other hospital they put me in was called Christus St. Vincent. What the hell do they have these religious names on there for? They're not Christian. They're as far from Christian as East is from West. They're basically in the Mickey Mouse Club. And they don't know anything about, I mean, I'm glad the surgeon only left some scar tissue I had to, deal with, and didn't make the whole thing a mess. So I was just on a breathing machine for the rest of my life. I guess I'm grateful for that kind of competence. But this idea of, don't think that when you go into an institution like the hospital, the spiritual battle doesn't continue. It continues. And I wonder who all the people that died from COVID really were, especially the ones that were just intubated and then they turn the oxygen up so high it blows their lungs out. Who were those people? Were they lambs? Is that a free kill? I know the nurses were so happy. They were dancing in the hall, drinking vodka and having orgies while the patients, but here's a tidbit you didn't know. The patients were in their rooms struggling for their lives and sick while the vodka and the orgies were going on in the hallway. I experienced it myself. I had to get out of the hospital AMA because they were partying at the nurses' station, and they were so drunk they were slamming things and dropping things, and it was just insane. And and I'm like, there are people here, there are patients here. They didn't care. They turned it into some kind of a bar and brothel. And so I got myself out of there. It's Christus St. Vincent, probably one of the worst run hospitals in the history of hospital care in the entire world. I should get, the only reason I quit writing my hospital piece was because the attacks were so heavy I couldn't handle them. The blowback. Like they were watching me write it. And so there is something to that paranoia I had when I was writing Society. I had that same feeling. I would lock up the script because I felt like they were watching me. Someone's always watching. Whatever you're doing, they're watching. Whatever I do, they're watching. And what's the game all about? But the game is about you and your free will and your soul and what you're going to do. That's the whole game, is to propagandize, to mind control, to MK Ultra you into giving it up. What's it? Your soul, meaning your life, your future, your providential homeland that you've fallen from, the restoration, the truth, the life, and the way, the purpose of you having been born, you're pathetic idiot being born in the first place. You've had no purpose. It's like a little amoeba going in circles, going to where the water is warmer and away from the cold. And that's your life. But that's not really you. That's just because you're in the valley of decision. You can't make a decision because they propagandized you into stopping that process and stopping, they want to control the psychic airwaves, but they can't. So they get upset. You remember in Kubrick's film, The Shining, they were most disturbed by Danny, the boy, because he had the psychic ability and that was interfering with the program. Kubrick nailed it right there. Do I know even one person in the USC Film School or anywhere in the world that I've met that understands that? And it wasn't like it was hidden. It was right in your face. I don't know even one person that puts that connection together. Not one. So they look at me and they just go, "You're crazy." And it's like, yeah, if you figure it out, you're crazy. And so what is the purpose of Earth? You get so much time to make up your mind, and then, it's like shit or get off the pot. And if you don't get off most people, unfortunately, in America, because they are so propagandized and so dumbed down, they don't make a decision, and they just, they're like the lemmings off the cliff. And I've been watching generation after generation just poof disappear. If you want to get serious about it, then you have to accept this one. A couple of premises. One, it's not about us. It's not about you. It's not about me. Two, suffering is guaranteed. That's why I could tear up right there and recover, because I accept the suffering of the rejection of the and they don't say what, the fact that no one says why, it makes me feel sorry for you. It's like, all I wanted to understand, all I ever wanted was just to understand what's going on, so I can make a decision about it, one way or the other, or just think about what it means. Not one book, nothing in the encyclopedia, not one philosopher, although Plato kind of had the cave, which could be taken another way to look at the uninitiated, the unwashed masses, something like that the masses are asleep to the way the world is. But I disagree. And the reason that they want to put the propaganda out about satanic panic is to cover mainly in the end is to make pedophilia legal. That's the end goal of everything right now. But even that's not the purpose of life. They just want to make minor attracted persons cool. They want to make people that would be violent or kill minor attracted persons. There's this one guy that had a cane in jail. He killed two of them with his cane, and vigilantism. No, they don't want that. They want to be accepted in society. So they bring in the Trojan horse. They force all the mutilation and castrations with the trans movement, and it's just a few centimeters to open pedophilia, which is probably what killed my daughter. Well, it was actually abuse, including sexual abuse, but psychological abuse, sexual abuse, because she sought it, because she was very young when all this was happening to her, before her personality could be formed. And so she got hardwired to want abuse, and she just wanted to be a wife, a mother, girlfriend, whatever, fall in love, have a normal life. Because she couldn't have that, she had deduced, then fuck it, I'm out of here. That's it. I don't think it was sorrow necessarily. I think it was just like, she just figured out, well, the world's the way it is. It sucks. Fuck it, I'm out of here. There's no room for someone like me that just wants, peace. It's really nice when you love someone, you have friends you love, and you have a hug, and you feel this purity about it, this openness about it, not like, boy, if I could get you into bed, I'd really show you. That sort of stuff people do when they hug. I've seen plenty of that in my life. But a real hug amongst friends that's pure is indescribable. It's like it's a healer. But if you don't trust the other person, if you think they're just trying to get in your pants or whatever, or some kind of thing like that, well, then the hug means nothing. Then when they try to hug you, here's what, I would give advice to young people. I'd say, get your fucking hands off me, asshole. Or even better, no, I won't fuck you. And just blurt that out at a party, or a wedding, even better. Or any of society's idiotic, rituals. Well, that's all I can do today. I doubt this will make it up there, but I just like, I've tried so hard to communicate with you, to be coherent and to not, to keep things in a grounded, discussion format and not take flights of fancy and, talk about weird things that occur to me and stuff, but talk about the dynamics of the world, of the world versus us. The world wants to love you, and God loves you, and you are going to make a choice. But going against the world is meaningless unless it's Christ. It's just someone rebelling against the world because they don't like it. That's I don't recommend that. Unless you're just a masochist, But suffering for Christ, I do recommend, because at the end of the day, my tears were not in vain. My sorrow, my heart, not in vain. My lamenting and self-criticism of what I should have done better, and what I'm guiltiest of is maybe dropping my discernment a little bit when I should be having my hackles up, But my mind you, I pretty much love all people. I understand, but the pain of that wall between us is. And they all say, but you're the one that's in command of that. Well, and you are too. See, no one says that to you. You never get that back in your face. You always dish it out, but you can't take it. You are too. You could change it too. Right? Don't just put it on, the little lambs of God running around, getting, baseball batted all day long. You can change it too. Your friends may not be around to talk to you anymore, but you can change the universe with free will. But you don't get to be wishy-washy about it, do you? You don't get to just oh, today I think I'll decide this and tomorrow I'll decide that. No, so when you go into the world, as we do, Jesus sends us out there. We take, it's just that, if they sense there's some Jesus in there, they get so angry a lot of the time. It's like, you're not cool. And I'm like, the coolest, who was you don't think Elijah was cool? Or Jesus, or John the Baptist, or any of these people were cool? You think the cool people were the Roman soldiers? The lawyers? The establishment of society and all their pomp and circumstance? You don't think the rebels were cool? So you're not a rebel if you're pushing past society's norms of taboo, and you're like, wow, I'm now into anal sex. I'm really, really digging it. And next, I'm going for dismemberment. I think I'm going to cut my penis off, and then I might just start cutting my limbs off too, because that provides a sexual high as well. And I know that's a taboo, and then pretty soon I'm going to want to live in a Bosch painting because I really like the torture going on. And you don't like that? No, I'm going to turn away from that. I lived a lot of time of, with mommy issues and mommy programming to try to turn us all into emasculated little, masochists. Or what is it when we want to hurt ourselves, being a masochist? Sadist is when you want to hurt someone else. Anyway, God bless. I'll see you next time.